Hey there, everybody. It's Cameron Morsey coming to you again live for another Q&A session on leadership and management questions that you might have. I have these throughout the week just to be able to hit you up during your regular work week. So any struggles that you have, anything that you're running into that causing you some concern, you can go ahead and bring those questions out here to me and to the community. I don't pretend to have all the answers, so the comments that are dropped in down below are sometimes the best advice that you can possibly get from other leaders and managers who are out there in the real world, around the world, who are struggling with the same things that you are. So while you jump on and while people tune into this, let us know where you're chiming in from. It's always nice to know that that some of these issues that we deal with day in, day out as leaders in our organization are something that everybody deals with around the world when we deal with people. Sierra, Gaddy, good to see you guys here. I also wanted to mention, for those of you that missed it, this last weekend I put up all of my videos up on YouTube. So I've started creating a YouTube channel and a little archive for all of my videos that I post throughout the day. Juliet, Deborah, good to see you guys here as well. So if you want to jump over to my Facebook page, the top post there is announcing the YouTube channel. You can go there and subscribe. That would be absolutely fantastic. So you get these resources. I also post these live sessions, these live Q&As. Some of the best advice that you can get is those simple answers to questions that you deal with on a day in, day out basis. And that's what this session is all about. For those of you that are coming in a little bit later here, I did this session at 9 o'clock Pacific Standard Time. If you want to know when I'm doing these, the event section in Facebook is the place to subscribe, just so you get those little news feed announcements. So thank you, Majed. Appreciate that. It's going to be great. I love having another channel to engage everybody with. I know a lot of people use YouTube. I know I do, as kind of just entertainment. I just have it kind of on in the background. So this is another way to engage with everybody and help everybody in their leadership and management out there. Clarabelle, Shelley, good to see you guys here as well. So I wanted to tackle a question that we dealt with last week in regards to micromanagement and dealing with a micromanaging boss. And so one thing that I haven't addressed, and somebody brought it up to my attention later, is really touting what it is that you do. So much of micromanagement is about trust. So we've talked about updating the boss and getting more information from them so that you can excel and that you can cut down on the interruptions. But one of the other things in building that trust is also touting the value that you bring to the particular project. So make sure that you demonstrate that you have an understanding of what it is that they're asking for, that you have gone the extra mile on things, and that you call those things out to them so that they know that you understand that. If you can tout that a little bit more, that's something that can be really beneficial to you. And it's something that I didn't mention. You know, tooting your own horn is not something that most of us really appreciate doing in the job and are comfortable doing on the job, but it's something that can be important for that micromanaging boss so that they understand that you know what's going on. Trust is foundation. You're absolutely right, Ryan. And so if they understand that you know the job, then they're going to be more apt to not micromanage you as much. So if you have any questions, anything you're struggling with this particular week, go ahead and drop down into the comment section and let me know what the question is. I'm looking to field one right now. And also, I always like to encourage everybody else, if you have any answers to the questions that we're dealing with here, by all means, drop those down in the comment section. I love it when you guys are engaging with each other and helping to provide those answers. I don't pretend to have all the answers. I don't pretend to have the best answer to a particular situation. So by all means, throw out your suggestions as well to those things, and that can be something that can be enormously beneficial to everybody that's out there. Manif asked the question, he'll start us off today with, is a yearly employee evaluation enough? What notes should be taken into account? Quick answer to that is that the yearly employee evaluation is not remotely enough. One of the most wasted things in organizations today is annual reviews. The reason is there's no actions and there's no accountability taken on any of those yearly reviews. So what you have is you have a situation where you get together with an employee for an hour, you shine them on for 5 minutes about all the things that are going well, and then you spend the remaining 55 minutes talking about the areas that they can improve. But you don't come up with an action plan and you don't follow through with anything. And so 12 months later, you end up having the exact same conversation. So no, I'm a big fan of weekly one-on-ones with your team, or if you're too busy or if you have too large of a team, bi-weekly one-on-ones with your team. But even if you just have annual reviews, you need to have a follow-up schedule to them, and you need to have specific goals. So I want your sales to improve 10% year over year. Well, how are you going to do that? What plan can you put in place? What milestones are in place? And when is the next meeting that you're going to follow up on this? So, as you can tell, I'm not a huge fan of yearly reviews simply because they aren't used particularly well, and that you need continual monthly, quarterly reviews after the fact to check on the progress that you're making in those annual reviews. So that's my long-winded answer to that. Sierra asked a question. One of my assistant managers is a micromanager. How can I help her trust her team? And so what I want you to do, Sierra, in this case is you are going to kind of give her some instructions and work with it. So first of all, you've identified the behavior. That's great. I want you to make sure that you identify that behavior with her. And the reason that you're concerned about her micromanagement in this case is that she can't be as productive as you need her to be as a leader if she is doing everybody else's jobs. That's a very simple explanation of why micromanagement doesn't work, and it really puts the onus on her of, hey, I want to be successful in this position, but I can't be if I keep demonstrating this behavior. And then what you're going to do is you're going to give her a couple of keys to overcoming that, or starting to overcome that, and trusting her team. So what you want to do is the simple micromanagement guidelines that I kind of give out every time this question comes up. Tell her to give those tasks to people, but then ask for specific updates. Let the person come to her an hour later, 2 hours later, with an update on what's going on. The other thing is she needs to be clear on a step-by-step basis of what she wants. So is there an example that she can use when she's giving something to somebody to do? Is there an example that she can use that can demonstrate what the end product should look like, so that she doesn't have to be over the shoulder instructing, the person has a reference point? So that's another great way of dealing with that, Sierra. But start with the updates, start with those examples, and start with focusing on clearly conveying to the employee what she wants out of that particular project. Those are the 3 areas to focus on right now. And then what you can do is you can start referencing the successes that she's had with people stepping up to the plate and doing exactly what she wants in those particular instances. And when you can reference those successes, that'll help build that trust. But that's how I would start that out. Explain why you're concerned about it, give her 3 things to work on, and then reference the successes after they've taken place. That's how I'd handle that one. Is there idea generator? Muhammad asked the question, I'm blessed with a huge idea generator. Is there a job that can ask only for this, coming up with ideas? No, Muhammad. The quick answer is, I mean, yes, sure, maybe CEOs, that sort of thing, are really coming up with ideas, but even in those cases, they have to focus on the execution. Ideas are cheap. I mean, we need great ideas, don't get me wrong on that, but ideas are cheap. What matters is execution. How many of you have talked amongst your peers about everything that the organization should be doing? I guarantee that you all have the authority to do a quarter of those things that you're mentioning over cocktails and writing out on napkins, whatever it is. So the issue is execution and whether you're going to do something about it. Now, I'm not accusing you of anything. You have plenty on your plate. Your role isn't necessarily to improve the whole operation. That should be a duty, but you usually have too much on your plate to do that. But that's just demonstrating that ideas are out there, but it's execution. So no, there isn't a job for just an idea generator, really. Not one that anybody can really apply for. The key is execution. So pick an idea and run with it. That's my idea for you. And that's something that is valuable everywhere out there for everybody. Awia, good to see you here as well. Sharon, love that you guys are tuning in from down under. Janlyn asked the question, good question, is, as a manager, how do we properly manage attritions? So when people leave the company, how do we manage that whole process? And one of the first things to do, and one thing that not nearly enough people in organizations do, is actually having an exit interview. What went right? You can ask at the exit interview, you ask the same questions you might ask if you're coming into the team to start out with. And that is, what were the problems that were out there in the organization that this person sees? What are the opportunities? What's going well? What's going wrong? And how could you have supported them better in the organization? And those exit interviews, a lot of people will still be clamming up, won't be discussing, but a lot of times you'll get some very real answers because those people are out the door and they don't have anything to lose and they feel like they can go ahead and be completely honest with you at that point. So my first key is to have an exit interview so you can gather some information from that person that is leaving the company. The other thing is that you need to constantly be looking for talent out there. It's one thing that I always recommend when we talk about hiring and interviewing people is that you need to constantly be looking for talent. Whether that is asking your peers whether people are looking for opportunities, whether that's just keeping an eye on friends of yours and their organizations and people that might be interested in coming over to your organization. You need to constantly be looking at that pipeline of people that are coming in. An attrition is, in the case of a healthy organization that has high attrition, lots of organizations have that for a variety of reasons. It can be an opportunity to really up your game and bring on great people. What I would also encourage you to do is make sure that you aren't just hiring to fill bodies and fill positions. You need to be bringing on people that are great individuals and who you know are going to succeed and who are going to raise the level of your overall staff. Don't fall into the trap of just hiring a body because you need somebody to fill a position on there. If you aren't hiring somebody that raises your overall level of talent, then you're hiring the wrong person. That's what you really need to focus on. So do those exit interviews, be consistent with your hiring practices, and take action on those things that you learn in the process, and hopefully that attrition comes down, or you can at least use it to better the organization as a whole. Mina asked the question, a little follow-up from our last session on Tuesday. Mina, good to see you back here. Looking to get some advice as a woman leader in a warehouse full of guys. I asked last time, but had to leave. Wasn't sure if it was addressed. Thank you. And no, I actually didn't address it. I didn't address that specific area on it. My answer the first time is the answer that I give for all leaders on things, and that is, you need to explain the why behind your decisions and behind your actions. First and foremost, they need to trust that you have a logic behind your leadership and your management of the operation. So when you give a task to these gentlemen, when you make a decision in regards to something, what you want to make sure that you are doing in all of these cases is you want to explain why it is. What was your thought process behind it? Why is it important? Why are you doing it in that particular case? That's always kind of the baseline. They need to know that you are a good leader first and foremost. And I think some advice was given by Gina, and I haven't seen her on here yet, but I appreciated her advice in the comment section, and that was you need to develop that serious look. My understanding is that you were part of the peer group. You were part of these gentlemen working in the warehouse and then were promoted, and you need to develop that serious look where they know that you are the leader, you are the boss, you are in control, and you need them to be held accountable to what's going on in the organization. So develop that serious look, but come up with a why, because if you have a thought process behind it, it helps with everything else, and it helps with that real baseline. But develop that why. That's my big advice. And don't fall for or acknowledge any of this woman-man thing that they might be pulling in the warehouse. I've worked in a warehouse before, and they'll know who's boss when you start describing things and you start working through things. It will be a process, again, because you came from the peer group. It's going to be a little bit of a process as they acknowledge that you are the boss, not just a coworker and friend in this particular case, but you'll get through it. Roderick, I'm not looking for positions right now, but I miss the times when I was out in the workforce leading and managing teams. I do miss that. Nelson Perez asks, how do you handle multiple employee resignations? Kind of getting back to the whole attrition thing. Well, first, again, exit interviews, Nelson. Make sure that you know why it is that everybody is leaving. Maybe you already have a feel for why that might be. But then realize and regroup and make sure that you're starting fresh. If you have multiple resignations, so if you have 3 people on a team of 10 that are leaving, that's a huge chunk of your overall organization. So First of all, everybody needs to rally around and make sure that you are handling your business while you're sourcing new talent for the team. But really look to bring in some new people. But you need to do those exit interviews. You need to know why it is that people were leaving. Again, even if you think you have a handle on why it is that they were leaving, you may very well be wrong, and you may be some either backline. There may be some other thing going on. So it's important to do those exit interviews. Next one is from Davidson, and that's, if you're not happy in your current job, you want to leave, but there's no vacant position to the other company. What is the best thing to do? Well, the thing is that you want to, as much as possible, get as much experience as you can in the current position. You may not be happy with the position that you have currently, but what you want to do is you want to make sure that you're making the most of that position that you have. So if there's any special projects, maybe you just need a challenge. Maybe you need something else to help you along in getting through this. And the other thing is you've looked for other companies, you've looked in other places for things, but keep looking. It used to take me, when I was looking for other positions or new challenges out there, it might take 6 to 12 months for me to find a new position out there. So keep being persistent. You can always find other positions. You can be offered other positions, but that doesn't mean that you have to take them. And so that's one thing that I always say with people that are looking for other work and wondering whether they should start looking for other work. Absolutely look for other work. It doesn't mean that you don't have to take it. But look for new challenges as much as possible, Davidson. That would be my advice to you on that is look for challenges in the workplace and try to build up that experience so that you have more experience for the next job that you want. Justin asked the question, I need managers that want to be the best. How can I do that? Well, Justin, first of all, you need to give them a reason to care. You need to factor in the motivational aspects of things. So if you want people to be the best, if you want that motivation, what you have to do is you have to find out what motivates them. Try asking them what motivates them. It's rarely money. Money is usually a factor, but it's usually third, fourth down on the list of things that you want, that people are really satisfied with. They want camaraderie. They want a natural ability to be their best and to do the best in their position. They want an intrinsic sense of worth. They want to be a part of something that's important. So find out what it is that is the trigger for these people. Tie it to a bigger purpose. Give them the reason that they want to. Give them a reason to excel. It's not enough that I once sold. I was part of a company that sold sheeting to luxury hotel groups, Wyndham, Disney, that sort of thing. And it wasn't, the purpose of the organization wasn't just to move sheets, it was to help make people's vacations better, and make people's stays better, and give them, a chance to recharge and reflect and make their vacation the best. That was what we really focused on. That was what our purpose was. So work on having a higher purpose, Justin, most importantly. The other thing that you need to do is, if you want the best, you need to tell people what the best is. So what are your expectations? What does their best look like? Concrete metrics as much as possible. If you want people to excel, if you want people to achieve a certain standard, then you need to be crystal clear on what that standard is. So get clear on those expectations. The other thing, Justin, is if you want them to be the best, you're going to have to be involved with them as much as possible. So set those high expectations, but then start having the conversations with them, the one-on-one communication with them, where you start mapping where they are now, where the expectations are, and what the plan is for the two of you to get there. All right, you and them need to work together. Managers and leaders who are operating at their best always have leaders above them that are helping them to operate at their best and peak efficiency on things. So come up with those expectations, find out where your people are, and then come up with a mutual plan for the two of you to get there. But deal with that motivation factor, set those expectations, and work with them. That's the real key. Next question is, What makes a continuous, Ahmed asked the question, what makes a continuous improvement scheme in a progressive organization? Ahmed, I'll be completely honest, I'm not sure exactly what progressive organization means, but continuous improvement is really simply about, A, measuring where you're at right now. So that's the first key to a continuous improvement. The next thing is to break out the process that you're looking at into its component parts and measure those. All right. So you have an initial measurement of, say, the warehouse shipping cycle. And then you break that up into its component parts of packing, finding the material, printing out the labels, shipping it out, that sort of thing. So you break it up into its component parts, you measure those, and then you see where you can make incremental improvements to each of those measures. So continuous improvement is very data driven. All right, because you need to know where you can make improvements. So a lot of cases that are given, this is like a Six Sigma thing, sort of thing, is like in restaurants, they will cut down, or they'll place things differently in the kitchen to literally cut down the number of steps that are taken by a waiter, because that speeds the delivery of the food. If you have more of the material available to you for the chefs, they can prepare the food quicker. It's those simple things where you break things down into their component parts and get each of them better. That's really the essence of continuous improvement. So measure, break it apart, measure it again, make some improvements, measure again, make some more improvements, measure again. That's really part of the key to that. So, HIF asked the question, what usually discuss to your managers during one-on-one sessions? And HIF, thank you. That's an absolutely great question to ask. So first of all, one of the main reasons that people don't do one-on-ones is they don't feel that they have the time. And I get it. You have 12 people on your team and you're sitting there thinking, how am I going to spend half an hour every week with every member of my team? That's almost an entire day of time that I'm spending meeting with them. I can't get my job done. And you know what? You're probably right. You probably don't have that amount of time. But here's the real secret about one-on-ones. They get quicker the more consistently you do them. So yes, it'll take half an hour per person, or maybe, I'll be honest with you, maybe even 45 minutes to an hour for some people, the first one-on-one that you have. However, the second one will be shorter and shorter and shorter. Pretty soon, after you've done these consistently for a month, you are down to 15-minute conversations that you're having with your people. Now, let me ask you, if you have 12 people and you're having 15-minute conversations, do you have 3 hours in your week to be able to spend on this? Absolutely you do, and you should, because it helps in so many other areas. You may say, no, I don't have three hours to spend, but I guarantee you, having weekly one-on-ones with your team, you will save 3 hours in other aspects of things, as far as getting buy-in, communication, that sort of thing, mistakes that are made, that sort of thing. So that's the first thing. And if, to answer your question, you want to first of all review their performance. So any performance metrics that they have, you want to review their performance so that you can highlight the importance of that, all right? If you have performance metrics for each of your team members, you should be going over that every single week. That way they know that it's important to you and it's something that they need to focus on. So review the performance, review the action steps that took place last week, all right? There should be action that comes out of each of your one-on-one sessions, and you need to review that in the week following, so that, again, you are holding them accountable to taking that action, and you can be continuously making those improvements, to reference the last question that we had. So you want to deal with those. But then you want to handle what is going well, what isn't going well, what problems they see, what opportunities they see, and how you can help them be better and do better at their job. Those are the 5 keys. What problems they see, what opportunities they see, what's going well, what's going wrong, and how you can help. Those are the 5 things. From the performance metrics, you come up with more action steps that you can work on and that you review the next time. That's really it. Now you can go ahead and throw in updates on, what's going on in the organization as a whole, but a lot of times I prefer to handle those updates, those general updates, in more of a group meeting setting or a group email. There's no sense spending 5 minutes updating every single person on what's going on in the organization, because now you've spread that out over 12 people. That was an hour of your time that you spent giving the same spiel over and over again. Give that in an email, give that in a memo, use another channel for that so that you're not repeating yourself. They really should be individual sessions. Hope I helped with that. But that was a great question, Hif. I really appreciate you throwing that in there because we talk about one-on-ones all the time, but not necessarily what's included in them. The next thing that we have here, I think, is, and actually, all right, so Ruan asked the question, we have great ideas at our company, but like you said, it's too much, and we actually tell one another we can't do all of this, but just the next meeting, we're taking on more. How do we stop this? So what you want to do is when you have a whole bunch of ideas, the key is in so many of these cases in meetings, and I think almost all of us have been there, is we have this meeting and we talk about a whole lot of stuff, but that's all we do is we talk. We don't actually do anything. I've been in a million of those meetings where there are no action steps. So what you want to do is, first of all, when you're meeting, you want to be clear on why you're there and what your goal is. Now, if you have 12 ideas that are proposed for dealing with this particular situation, I think the best thing to do is to really isolate and come up with a few that everybody can agree on is something that might work out for you. And then what you do is you separate into teams and you all try to tackle one particular aspect of that. The key is action on things. And so if you're in an organization that has a ton of ideas, that's fantastic. The downside of that is nobody can ever settle on one idea to go forward with. Great. Settle on 3 ideas to go forward with, split it up between the people, and then come back in the next meeting and see what progress has been made in those particular areas. But you need to take that next step out of idea generation and start getting into the execution stage of things. That's so important in all of these things, because what happens is you waste a week, 2 weeks, a month even, having recurring meetings before you finally settle on what you should be doing, when you could have been taking a whole bunch of steps prior. But that's my big advice on that, Ron, is split it up and start taking those ideas on, because they're going to be necessary at some point. Tammy asked the question, one of the things I didn't like with the previous employer is that the company never really addressed attrition of executives. They never acknowledged it. I feel like there should be at least a generic email saying that people left the company. When it's never addressed and treated in science, the rumor mill starts and gossip is damaging. You know, Tammy, I agree 100% on that. I was actually been in companies like that, where all of a sudden you found out that a VP left 3 weeks ago and nobody knew anything about it. It's important that the company sends out, congratulations, this particular person has moved on, and this person is accepting their role, because what happens is people are trying to contact that person they don't know they've left, and it really just stymies productivity. So no, you're right, they should send out that email. They should let everybody know that this person is with the company and who's taking on their duties. You're absolutely correct in that. I don't really have anything else to say other than you're right, and I wish more companies would do that, but sometimes they just don't want to delve into those sensitive matters. I kind of understand it, but it's poor management, poor communication when that doesn't take place. Ryan asked the question, great question, that's what are ways to handle a weak leader who reports to me? He is not leading and daily operations are struggling. Is it acceptable to step in and make changes to improve operations without demeaning the leader and giving him a chance to improve? Ryan, what I do is I wouldn't step in and do it without this leader. I would step in with the leader and look to make the changes. Perhaps you simply need to demonstrate a little bit more through action what it is that you're looking for. And I don't mean to say that you haven't communicated this. I'm sure that you have. But leaders routinely have a very, very hard problem separating where they were with where they are. So most leaders are promoted because they are great at individual efforts. They are great at performance on an individual capacity and getting the most out of themselves. But when you move to leadership, it's about getting the most out of the team. And that's 2 very different things. And so even if you can consciously acknowledge that you should be working through your team and not yourself, you've got years of ingrained behavior that you're going through in your mind. And so this may be an absolutely fantastic leader. They just might be struggling making that jump into leadership. So yes, get in that operation and start demonstrating what it is, but do it with them. Okay? And that way you're building them up. You're making them a part of it. You can hand it off to them and you're not undermining their leadership at all. Give them that chance to improve. The other thing is make sure that you're crystal clear on what you're looking for. All right. You might say, I want them to be a stronger leader, but what does that actually mean? Does that mean them taking charge in a crisis? Does that mean them disciplining employees? Does that mean that their performance of their team improves? What is it exactly that you're looking for? And when you get clear on what a great leader looks like for you, then you can build that plan for them moving forward. And when you step in, you can tie it to what exactly it is that you're looking for from them, Ryan. But yes, dive in. I love that. I love the attitude there, but do it with them, not without them. That would be my advice. Janelyn asked the question, how can you make employees feel inspired to work? And Janelyn, I've mentioned this kind of before in regards to talking about motivation and talking about purpose. But one of the big things that we miss out on, and one thing that I try to mention in each one of these live sessions, is that we are too hyper-focused on the things that are going wrong in our organizations. As leaders, we're focused on fixing problems. And that's great. Problems need to get fixed. But one of the best ways to inspire your people and to motivate your people is to start calling out the successes. 90% plus of the time, things go perfectly, things go well, but we don't necessarily call it out. We're calling out and we're mentioning and we're talking about and we're addressing that 5% of times where things didn't go well. And so when you're constantly focused on the negative, people have a more negative frame of mind. They feel a little defeated. So one of the first things you can do to make your people feel a little bit more inspired is to start focusing on those successes. Every single day somebody is learning something. Somebody is having a great sales call. Somebody is shipping more items than they ever shipped before. Sometimes they're more supportive of their teammates, that sort of thing. Catch them doing things right. That's a nice way of phrasing it for you. So catch your team doing things right, and they'll feel a little bit more inspired. The other things, as far as finding out what motivates them, tying things to a sense of importance, those are secondary, and those are absolutely things that you should be doing. Make sure that they know that what the work that they do is important. And if you can't figure out why the work that they do is important, think about this. If your team disappeared one day, they all went on vacation, and nobody knew about it, and nobody stepped in and did their jobs, what would happen to the organization? There wouldn't be any sales. No customer calls would get answered, so customers would find other competitors. No orders would get shipped. No invoices would get processed. No bills would get paid. The lights would get turned off in the place. So if you have a problem coming up with why they are important, think about that sort of scenario. But really focus on success and focus on why they're important, and you'll really help yourself out in those areas. And next question is, Rania, good to see you here from Lebanon. And Charlene, always good to see you here. And I'm glad you're at the beach. It's sunny and beautiful here. I am going to get outside later on today. Let's see. And Mina, there you go. Mohammed asked the question, how can I motivate people when they are not happy for salary and they've been a long time for the company? What you do, Muhammad, is you tackle them with a challenge. So you have I'm taking this as a person who's been with the company for a while, and they aren't happy with their salary, and so they've gotten themselves in a rut. And this is very common. I've dealt with this many times before. People get used to the salary that they make, and as thrilled as they might have been when you initially hired them, all of a sudden 2 years later they're in the same job, but they want to know where the next step is in their career. And what you do in those cases, Muhammad, is yes, you can reference successes on things with them, but what you also want to focus on is you also want to focus on challenging and developing them. The surest way to get a salary increase is to get a promotion. That's what I always tell people. Don't ask your boss for an increase in salary. They probably can't give it to you. But what you can do is you can figure out a way that you can get promoted. So I'd start looking for a plan for this person to promote them to the next level. I realize that if they're in sales, that might not necessarily be something that is doable in some cases, although you can put them on different accounts. But find a way to have them progress in the company, and that'll be enormously helpful for you. Yes. Janelyn mentions the SMART action plan, and for those of you that don't know that, it's goal setting. And when you set up goals, and I appreciate you mentioning this because I absolutely love it, is you want to set it up in a SMART. So SMART stands for specific. The goal needs to be hyper specific on what it is. By way of that, it needs to be measurable. It needs to be actionable. The R escapes me right now. And then there needs to be a timetable associated with it. Realistic, that's it. So any goal that you make needs to be specific, measurable, actionable, realistic. That was the R. And it needs to have a timetable. And that's what you do on so many of these things when you start setting up plans, goals, expectations. That's how you get from A to B, is setting up those particular things. But that's absolutely fantastic. So Hendrian asked the question, good to see you from South Africa today. Just got a promotion in my company as a team leader. Congrats on that. I appreciate that. That's fantastic for you. The team seemed apprehensive at the announcement. How do I win them over to ensure a productive and great team success? And Hendrian, you aren't alone in that. It's good of you that you've noticed that particular aspect of things. So what you want to do is, in so many cases, I dealt with this with Mina earlier on this, is in dealing with female-male things, is you want to handle the why. The base level of trust that your employees are going to have in you as a leader is when they understand the thought processes that you make and that there is thought behind the decisions and the actions that you take. So when you make decisions, when you hand out duties, when you work on projects, explain why it is that you're giving this to a particular person, why it is that this task is important, why it is that you're doing the project this way. Explain your reasoning, and that helps build the trust and respect amongst your team. The next thing that you really want to do, that kind of sidestep, you want to focus on three things. When you start any new position, the first thing that you want to do is you want to listen as much as possible. Now, if you were brought up within this team, you probably have a good idea of what's going on out there, but you need to listen to your employees first and foremost, and you may have that background already, but you need to listen to your peers for common issues that people deal with at your level of management in the company. You need to listen clearly to your boss for expectations, but you need to be listening and gathering information. You are now in a new position, in a new environment, shall we say. And even though you're in the same building, what you're going to be hearing and what you're going to be tasked with is so much different than when you were at the employee level. So listen to what's going on around you. Next is setting priorities. You want to make sure that your team is working on the most important things. You cannot get everything done in today's organizations. There is always more to do. But what you can do is you can get done the important things. So much of the frustrations that team members have with leaders is that leaders don't set priorities and they just give them 5 tasks and say, hey, do them all. Well, each of those tasks is going to take 4 hours, so that's 20 hours of work. I have 10 hours that I'm going to be here. What do you mean do everything? And so that can be very frustrating. So prioritize as much as possible. And the other thing is just get used to delegating. Start that right away where you hand tasks. Your job now is to work through your people and get the most out of them and make them as productive as possible. All right. So that means that you are going to have to give over tasks, explain what you want done, trust that it's going to get done. And then find out later on. But get some practice with that. That's often the most difficult thing for new leaders to handle is delegation. So the quicker you get at practicing it, the better you're going to be down the road. So explain the why behind your decision so they trust and respect the logic behind you. But then it's listening, prioritizing, and delegating. Those are the things that you want to tackle right away, Hendrian. But congrats on the new position. That's awesome that you're moving up. Mohammed asked the question, kind of follow up, and for those that missed the prior ones, how to motivate the team. Part of it is focusing on successes. We focus on problems too much in leadership, so catch people doing things right. Find out what motivates people and then build that sense of importance. I've handled it already kind of before on this Q&A, so you can check back a little bit earlier. But that sense of importance on what they do, the tasks that they do, how they tie into overall organizational goals, that gives people a sense of importance when they are working on important stuff. But catch them doing things right. That's always the best advice that we have. Bev, I'm glad you like the advice out there. Next question is, and for what you can do to continuously improve my skills, it would be okay. Anita asked the question, it's from the UK. Good to see you here today. I know it's a little bit later in your day than it is here in Vegas. In a very small team, how do you deal with employees who don't meet deadlines, incentives, or sanctions? Do you use incentives or sanctions? You actually tackle this, Anita, first. You need to tackle it from the beginning of when the deadlines are set. All right, so it's great to give a task, and it's great to give a deadline. Too many times we don't give deadlines, but you need a little follow-up to those deadlines. You need to make sure that there's a plan in place that can meet those deadlines, that you have some buy-in from the employee, that those deadlines are realistic. And then what you need to do is you need to follow up down the road as well and see where new tasks and new priorities come in, then how they affect the current task. So a lot of times what happens is you give a deadline on something, but then the next day you give them another task, and the next day you give them another task, and you give them another task, and they don't know where that fits in with what you had given them prior. So you need that maintenance of those deadlines and those priorities, and that comes from that communication with that employee. You may have forgotten that the 5 things that you gave them yesterday to do, but they haven't. So they need to be open. You need to be open to them asking you, okay, but I've got this, and these are due tomorrow. Do I still work on what you want me to do today, or do those deadlines shift? So be clear up front with the deadline on them. It can be 10, 20, 30 seconds is all it takes to come up with a brief plan, get some buy-in from them as far as the deadline, and that helps you hold them accountable later on when they said the deadline was doable and they could come up with a plan to get there. Maintain it so you don't undermine those deadlines down the road. And then when they don't meet the deadlines, you need to have a debrief afterwards and say, hey, what happened in this particular case? Before you ever go down the route of holding them accountable through discipline, you need to make sure that you as the leader had your ducks in a row and you set them up for success. All right, so have that debrief and figure out why they didn't meet the deadlines. You may be able to take some actions. Once you have all of those things in place, if it becomes a repeated instance, then yes, I would say sanctions, as you called them, or discipline is something that you can do so that people know that you're serious when you set deadlines, when you've talked about the plan to reach those deadlines, when you supported them through the process so that they could meet those deadlines. If they don't, then that's a work performance issue that you need to address. And that's unfortunately how it has to go sometimes with things, Anita. So I'm going to have to cut it off here, everybody. I'm running a little bit long on time here. I know I didn't get to all of the questions today, but I will be dropping down into the comments section and answering as many of those as possible. I try to get to every single one that is out there. So if I didn't get to your question, I'll try to get it in the comments section. Otherwise, tune into my events page on Facebook. Subscribe there and you'll know about when these sessions are. I'm going to be scheduling them next week as well. Thanks so much, everyone. It was great seeing you here. Bye-bye.